Jason Brown is the leader of the AHK street gang. Prosecutors say this is him giving $500 to a man he thought would wire the money to an ISIS soldier. That man was really an informant for the feds.
This is Thaddeus Jimenez in 2015 driving his brand new Mercedes, just one of the perks of his newfound freedom. At the age of 13, he was wrongly sent to prison for murder. He was released in 2009 and won a $25 million judgment against the city. But prosecutors say Jimenez couldn't shake the streets and used his millions to build his gang.
41-year-old Donald Lee and 31-year-old Torrance Benson each now face mandatory sentences of life in prison. Prosecutors say the two were behind a string of murders, shootings, robberies, and narcotics trafficking cases stretching back 2 decades.
Chicago has a long history of gang activity, with numerous gangs vying for control of different neighborhoods. These gangs are involved in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking, violent crimes, and gun trafficking. This video provides detailed information on several key figures associated with some of the most notorious gangs in Chicago, highlighting their criminal activities and the legal consequences they have faced.
Also making news, he got his life back when he was finally released from prison after being wrongly convicted of murder. But now, this man, Thaddeus Jimenez, is back behind bars. Prosecutors say when he got his freedom, he turned to the gang life. This is Thaddeus Jimenez in 2015 driving his brand new Mercedes, just one of the perks of his newfound freedom. At the age of 13, he was wrongly sent to prison for murder. He was released in 2009 and won a $25 million judgment against the city. But prosecutors say Jimenez couldn't shake the streets and used his millions to build his gang.
Y'all don't understand, we are the police over here. We are the law enforcement. We are the rule government in our own communities. Self-sovereign. True royalty. Nobody above us.
They say Jimenez admitted to this 2015 shooting while pleading guilty to a gun charge.
Thaddeus T.J. Jimenez was associated with the Simon City Royals, a Chicago-based street gang. The Simon City Royals are known for their involvement in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking and violent crimes. Jimenez's gang involvement played a significant role in his life, both before and after his wrongful conviction. Thaddeus T.J. Jimenez, a Chicago native, was wrongfully convicted of murder at the age of 13. In 1993, he was accused of shooting 19-year-old Eric Morrow in the chest. Despite evidence pointing to another suspect, Juan Carlos Torres, Jimenez was convicted and sentenced to 45 years in prison. His conviction was based on the testimony of witnesses who later recanted their statements. Jimenez spent over 16 years in prison before being exonerated and released in 2009. After his release, Jimenez was awarded $25 million in a federal wrongful conviction lawsuit against the city of Chicago. However, his post-exoneration life took a downturn. In 2015, he was involved in gang activities and shot an acquaintance in the legs, which led to his arrest and a subsequent prison sentence. Jimenez's case is a stark example of the systemic issues within the criminal justice system, including wrongful convictions based on faulty eyewitness testimony and inadequate defense.
27-year-old Alexander Varela, a gang member with an extensive criminal record.
There was a petty argument between a couple of women and this offender who lives on the block, who's a gang member. He's the one who chose to insert himself into the argument, okay? He wasn't at the party. He wasn't invited to the party.
It was the night of October 6th on the 2200 block of North Kilbourne in the Hermosa neighborhood. Police say Varela, accompanied by several others, approached the arguing women and demanded to know their gang affiliation, claiming the block as his own. They denied any, but soon others from the party came out of the house and the confrontation turned physical.
During the melee, Alexander Varela yelled out to his fellow gang members, "Bust, bust, bust," which was an order for the armed gang member to fire his gun.
According to prosecutors, it was precisely at this time that the 2-year-old Julian wandered out of the gate of the house where the party was being held and into the alley. An 18-year-old running away from the impending gunshots saw the toddler and grabbed him, but it was too late. Both of them were shot, Julian fatally. Varela is now charged with first-degree murder. The search for the man who pulled the trigger continues.
Alexander Varela a gang leader of the maniac Latin Disciples, was involved in a significant gang-related crime that resulted in the death of a 2-year-old boy named Julian Gonzalez. The incident occurred on October 6, 2018, during a birthday party where an argument escalated, leading Varela to order a fellow gang member to fire shots into a crowd. The shooting resulted in the tragic death of Julian Gonzalez. Following his arrest, Varela faced multiple charges, including first-degree murder. The specifics of his sentencing, however, are not detailed in the available sources. Given the nature of the charges and the circumstances of the crime, he likely faced a severe penalty, potentially a long-term prison
found
sentence.
the reputed leaders of the Wicked Town Gang guilty of racketeering and murder. 41-year-old Donald Lee and 31-year-old Torrance Benson each now face mandatory sentences of life in prison. Prosecutors say the two were behind a string of murders, shootings, robberies, and narcotics trafficking cases stretching back 2 decades.
Leader Donald Lee and top associate Torrance Benson have been convicted in federal court. Lee and Benson are 2 of 13 people indicted in a multi-office investigation into a violent street gang on the west side. The others previously pled guilty and are awaiting their sentencing. U.S. Attorney John Lausch Jr. says the evidence revealed the extent of the violence the gang carried out to protect their drug trafficking operation, including 19 murders and 19 attempted murders.
Donald Lee, a leader of the Wicked Town faction of the traveling Vice Lords street gang, was convicted on multiple charges, including racketeering conspiracy, firearm offenses, and drug charges. His conviction was the result of a multi-year investigation into the gang's criminal activities, which included numerous acts of violence, such as murders, attempted murders, armed robberies, and assaults. The Wicked Town faction was heavily involved in drug trafficking and used violence to protect their operations. During the investigation, law enforcement seized over 45 firearms, significant quantities of and numerous rounds of ammunition. The gang also used social media to promote their activities and intimidate rivals and witnesses. Lee was found guilty of committing 3 murders and supplying firearms for additional killings. His conviction carries a mandatory life
Jason
sentence.
Brown, a.k.a. Abdul Jameh, gang leader, drug dealer, but the feds say he was working the streets for ISIS.
And tonight, CBS 2's Tara Molina shows us the feds' case against the accused homegrown terrorist.
Jason Brown, $500 cash in hand, finger in the air, smiling as he says, Allah knows. The image is from August 16th of this year, when, according to this federal complaint, Brown planned to, quote, knowingly provide material support and resources to a foreign terrorist organization. Brown's support? Money, at least 3 times, to who he believed was an ISIS militant.
Jason Brown is the leader of the AHK street gang. Prosecutors say this is him giving $500 to a man he thought would wire the money to an ISIS soldier. That man was really an informant for the feds. Federal agents could be seen going in and out of Brown's Lombard home yesterday. According to court documents, Brown required all members of his gang to convert to Islam. He actively recruited and radicalized members to support ISIS.
Jason Brown, also known as Abdul Jameh, is the leader of the AHK, a House of Knowledge, street gang based in the Chicago suburb of Bellwood. The gang comprises former members of other gangs, including the Black P. Stones, Gangster Disciples, and Four Corner Hustlers. Brown, 37 years old and residing in Lombard, Illinois, was arrested in November 2019 for attempting to provide material support to ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq, and Al-Shem. He provided $500 in cash on 3 separate occasions to an individual he believed was supporting ISIS, who was actually an undercover law enforcement officer. In addition to his charges related to terrorism, Brown and other AHK members were involved in drug trafficking activities, distributing in the Chicago area. The AHK gang operated drug markets in Chicago's North Lawndale and Humboldt Park neighborhoods, and they often boasted about their activities on social media. Brown faces up to 20 years in prison for the material support charge. while other gang members face various sentences for drug-related offenses.
The leader of the Black Disciples gang is among nearly 24 people charged in a federal takedown.
They are all calling this a major win, taking down very high-ranking members of the Black Disciples street gang, including, as you mentioned, the leader of that gang. That man is Darnell McMiller. Here is a photo of him. He is known, police say, as Murder. CPD, along with its federal partners, worked on this case for several years with help from informants, and yesterday made these arrests.
Darnell McMiller, also known as Murder, is a prominent figure in the Black Disciples street gang in Chicago. At 34 years old, McMiller is described as the current leader of this notorious gang. He was arrested and charged as part of a comprehensive federal investigation into drug and gun trafficking that involved multiple high-ranking gang members. The investigation, which was led by the FBI and the Chicago Police Department, uncovered significant quantities of drugs and firearms. Law enforcement seized 24 firearms, more than 13 kilograms of over a kilogram. The investigation primarily targeted the Englewood neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, where much of the illicit activity took place. McMiller was specifically charged with conspiring to distribute, among other drug trafficking offenses. The charges against him and his associates were part of a broader effort to disrupt and dismantle the operations of the Black Disciples and related criminal activities. In addition to McMiller, other high-ranking members of the Black Disciples, such as Clarence January and Kenneth Brown, were also charged. The investigation highlighted more than 50 illicit transactions involving drugs and firearms, often captured through covert recordings by cooperating individuals. Gilbert Spiller, a high-ranking member of the Black P. Stone Nation gang, operated primarily in the Southside Chicago neighborhood referred to as Terror Town. Holding the rank of general, Spiller was involved in extensive criminal activities spanning over 2 decades, including drug trafficking and multiple violent crimes. In 2011, Spiller was arrested by the FBI and Chicago police, and later pleaded guilty to charges of selling and illegally selling a firearm. He admitted to selling approximately 62.2 grams of 13, 2011, and another 59.2 grams on July 21, 2011, to a confidential informant. Additionally, on October 18, 2011, he sold a loaded .40 caliber handgun to the same informant, knowing the buyer was a felon on parole. Spiller's criminal history includes convictions for aggravated battery with a firearm, aggravated discharge of a firearm from a drive-by shooting, and aggravated battery of a Chicago police officer. He admitted involvement in multiple shootings, believing he hit his targets in roughly half of these incidents. In February 2013, U.S. District Judge Charles Kokoras sentenced Spiller to 20 years in federal prison for his crimes. This sentence reflected the severity of his actions and his long-standing involvement in violent crime. LeBar Broman Spann, a leader of the Four Corner Hustlers gang in Chicago, was convicted in 2021 for his involvement in a racketeering conspiracy that included multiple murders and other violent crimes. Spann was found guilty of orchestrating the murders of Maximilian McDaniel, George King, Willie Woods, and Rudy Rangel as part of his efforts to control drug trafficking and eliminate rivals. His leadership was characterized by extreme violence and intimidation, making him a feared figure in Chicago's criminal underworld.
I and those 23 members are part of a faction called Goonie Boss, and according to authorities, they are responsible for as many as 11 murders in and around the Englewood neighborhood. They say the Goonie Boss hit squad routinely terrorized the 3 square mile area where basketball hoops are makeshift, boarded up homes are commonplace, and the median income is less than $20,000 a year. Sources say the faction has been operating for years in the streets and alleys around 72nd and 73rd Street near Hermitage, Paulina, Marshfield, and Ashland. In addition to the 11 murders, Goonie Boss members are accused of being part of a gun trafficking group that burglarized a gun shop downstate. The 11 cases that make up the indictment date at least as far back as 2016, according to the Chicago Police Department. So far, authorities haven't said whether any of the murders happened on Englewood streets. The joint FBI and Chicago Police Department investigation has resulted in federal racketeering charges in addition to the state murder and gun charges. and the interagency cooperation was so extensive that Cook County prosecutors were actually deputized as federal prosecutors in order to maximize the level of potential punishment within the state and federal systems.
Romeo O-Dog Blackman is a leader of the Goonie Boss Goonie Gang, a faction of the Gangster Disciples operating in Chicago. Blackman, along with Terrence T. Smith and Jalicious Jojo Turman, was convicted on federal racketeering charges. The gang was involved in a violent crime spree that included multiple murders, attempted murders, and other violent acts aimed at protecting their territory in the Englewood neighborhood. Blackman and Smith were found guilty of multiple murders, including the killings of Stanley Bobo, Crystal Jackson, Andre Donner, Davin Horace, and Gerald Shaws. They also faced charges for attempted murders. These convictions came after a lengthy trial where jurors were presented with evidence of the gang's violent activities, including surveillance videos and social media posts where gang members boasted about their crimes. The investigation into the Goonie Gang revealed a pattern of extreme violence, with members regularly engaging in shootings and other criminal activities. The gang's operations and the subsequent legal actions against its leaders highlight the persistent gang violence in parts of Chicago and the efforts by law enforcement to combat it.
The Hobos Street Gang is a reflection of the realities and challenges we're facing right now. This was not the BDs or the GDs with thousands of members. This was a faction of factions, an intimate group with members that came from those different gangs, but who came together with a common vision and purpose to be the most violent, ruthless, and fierce street gang on the south side in Chicago. They terrorized Chicago neighborhoods on the south side for years. They dealt drugs, they committed robberies, including armed robberies. They tortured victims. They killed rival gang members. They killed rival drug dealers. And when one of their own sought to cooperate with our investigation, they assassinated him in cold blood in front of his girlfriend, in front of his small children.
Gregory Bowlegs Chester, also known as Big Homie and Pops, was a leader of the Hobos Street Gang in Chicago. The Hobos, a violent and tightly knit gang, were involved in numerous criminal activities, including murders, robberies, and drug trafficking. The gang originated from factions of the larger Gangster Disciples and Black Disciples, and primarily operated on the south side of Chicago. In a significant federal trial, Chester and other key members of the Hobos, including Paris Polarowski Poe, were convicted on racketeering charges. Chester was sentenced to 40 years in prison for his leadership role and participation in the gang's violent activities. The Hobos were notorious for their ruthless use of violence to maintain control over their territory and silence witnesses. Chester was charged with multiple murders, including the killing of government witness Keith Daniels in 2013 to prevent him from testifying. This murder was particularly brutal, carried out in front of Daniels' young stepchildren. The gang's activities were marked by a high degree of organization and willingness to use extreme violence, making them one of Chicago's most feared street gangs during their operation. The detailed profiles of these individuals illustrate the pervasive and violent nature of gang activities in Chicago. Law enforcement efforts have led to significant arrests and convictions, aiming to disrupt these criminal enterprises and reduce violence in affected neighborhoods. However, the ongoing battle against gang-related crime in Chicago remains a challenge.
You know what I'm saying? So Trump, look, you want our support? You have to promise in writing on your life, you gonna free Larry, bro.
And there's not gonna be no killing without killing, gentlemen. With all due respect. Definitely not gonna be any killing without killing, you know. And I would like that to be clear for the record. I understand the fact that we got police in here. I wanted you to be here to understand what I said.
Hoover, King, Shorty, Prince, Old Timer, Godfather, all of them. They came from the six. The six pointed star represents King David. King David is known as the king of all kings because he brought many different nations.
While incarcerated, Lloyd wrote the Amalgamated Order of Lordism, 61 pages obtained by ABC7 that detailed the Vice Lord command structure in the prisons and on the streets.
Chicago's history is steeped in tales of powerful and enigmatic gang leaders who have left an indelible mark on the city's fabric. From the early days of organized crime to the complex street gang dynamics of the late 20th century, these figures have been both vilified and mythologized. Their stories intertwine with themes of power, violence, community influence, and, in some cases, redemption. This overview explores the lives of notable Chicago gangsters, each contributing uniquely to the legacy of gang culture in the city. Their impact extends beyond criminal activities, touching on social and community dynamics in ways that continue to resonate. Eugene Bowl Hairston was a co-founder of the Blackstone Rangers, a gang that emerged in the late 1950s in Chicago. He was born on May 1, 1944, and moved to Chicago from Columbus, Ohio, with his family in 1955. Hairston was known for his charisma and influence in the Woodlawn neighborhood, where he became involved with local pimps, hustlers, and gamblers, earning him significant respect and the nickname Bull, which later evolved into King Bull. The Blackstone Rangers were founded by Hairston and Jeff Fort while they were at the Illinois School for Boys in St. Charles. Initially, the gang consisted of local kids banding together for protection against rival gangs. However, their activities soon expanded into profitable criminal ventures. By 1965, the gang's membership had grown to 5,000, and they were involved in various illegal activities. Under Hairston and Fort's leadership, the Rangers transformed into the Black P Stone Nation, Black P Stone/BPSN, in 1966, uniting 21 smaller gangs. Despite their criminal activities, the Blackstone Rangers, under Hairston's leadership, were known to engage with the community. For instance, in 1965, with the help of Reverend John Fry, they received a charter from the state of Illinois to create a political organization named the Grassroots Independent Voters of Illinois. This organization was purportedly aimed at creating a job training program, but ended up funneling a $1 million government grant into criminal activities. Hairston's leadership saw a power struggle with Fort when both were imprisoned, leading to a split in the gang. Fort converted to Islam, changed his name, and transformed the gang into El Rukin, focusing on drug trafficking. Hairston led dissident members who formed smaller rival gangs such as the Titanic Stones. Eugene Bowl Hairston, one of the original leaders of the Black P Stone Nation street gang, was killed in an apparent execution-style shooting.
King Hoover, King Shorty, Prince Old Timer, Godfather, all of them, they came from the six. The six pointed star represents King David. King David is known as the king of all kings because he brought many different nations until our foes, and they was called branches of the disciple nation. And because King David had a lot to do with bringing them in and leaving them with the leadership they had or placing leadership amongst them, he was known to be the King of Kings.
David Boxdale, also known as King David, was born on May 24, 1947, in Salis, Mississippi, and moved with his family to Chicago, Illinois, in 1957. He became a prominent figure in Chicago's gang history, founding the Black Disciples street gang as a teenager. His leadership was marked by both fear and respect, as he led the gang through numerous violent conflicts with rival groups. Boxdale's life took a significant turn in 1968 when he survived an assassination attempt by members of the Blackstone Rangers, a rival gang. This incident left him with wounds that never fully healed and led to a shift in his focus towards reducing gang violence and promoting community activism. He worked towards forming alliances with other local gangs, including merging with the Gangster Nation led by Larry Hoover to form the Disciple Nation. Despite their efforts, they were unable to incorporate the largest gang in Chicago, the Blackstone Rangers, into their alliance, and gang warfare persisted. Boxdale's activism extended beyond gang truces. He became involved in community services like health clinics and free meal programs for children in the Englewood neighborhood. He also sought to establish connections with the Black Panther Party and maintained a close relationship with Fred Hampton, the party's Illinois chairman. Boxdale's efforts earned him the revered title of King David among his followers and the broader community. Tragically, Boxdale's life was cut short when he died on September 2, 1974, at the age of 27 due to kidney failure, a result of the injuries sustained from the 1968 shooting. His death marked the end of a significant chapter in Chicago's gang history, but his legacy continued as the Black Disciples and their offshoots remained active in the city. Raymond "Shaky" Sean Betts was identified as a key figure within the Four Corner Hustlers, a notorious street gang in Chicago. His leadership within the gang, particularly in the Body Snatchers faction, marked a period of significant criminal activity, including drug trafficking on the west side of Chicago. Betts' influence extended even after his imprisonment, maintaining control and contributing to violence and drug distribution in the area. His operations were so entrenched that upon his release from prison in 2006, he was immediately under surveillance, leading to a major law enforcement operation that culminated in his arrest along with 54 other gang members. This operation, dubbed Operation Capitol Hill, was a significant effort to dismantle the gang structure and reduce its impact on the community. Marvell Thompson is known for his leadership role in the Black Disciples, a significant street gang in Chicago. During his tenure, he played a part in easing gang tensions between 1991 and 1994, a period that followed after a series of violent events. The Black Disciples have been a part of Chicago's organized crime scene for many years, with their activities spanning various aspects of criminal enterprise, including drug trafficking and violent crimes. Willie "Flukey" Stokes was a prominent figure in Chicago, known not only for his role as a drug kingpin, but also for his unique and flamboyant lifestyle. His lavish spending was evident in the grand funeral he organized for his son, Willie "Wimp" Stokes Jr., who was buried in a custom-made Cadillac-style coffin, complete with flashing lights and an authentic grill. The funeral attracted national attention and showcased Stokes' penchant for extravagance and gambling, as indicated by the thematic floral arrangements at his own funeral, which included dice and playing cards. Stokes himself was laid to rest in a crypt that he had purchased for $40,000 in cash, following a procession that featured a 100-car parade and a restored white 1956 Cadillac leading the way to the mausoleum. His burial in the Tower of Memories mausoleum was marked by a service attended by hundreds, with his mahogany casket sealed with rose-colored Portuguese marble. Stokes' reputation and the elaborate ceremonies surrounding his and his son's funerals underscore his significant influence and the complex legacy he left behind in Chicago's history.
Authorities say it could be the opening salvos of a full-scale gang war in Chicago. 42-year-old Willie Lloyd, the self-proclaimed leader of the Vice Lords, is behind bars once again following a wave of gang activity over the weekend. Police say a power struggle began shortly after Lloyd was released from prison in December. He served half of a 7-year sentence for 2 weapons convictions. His return to power in the Vice Lords is reportedly being challenged by former top gang associates.
There was a falling out among gang members over the distribution of dope and monies owed.
Lloyd's arrest follows a violent series of events. On Friday, police say Lloyd allegedly kidnaps the brother of a top gang lieutenant in an attempt to convince the associate to resume paying street taxes for the privilege of selling drugs on Vice Lord turf. On Saturday, the lieutenant retaliates in a failed assassination attempt on the Eisenhower Expressway. On Sunday, Lloyd is arrested in Deerfield as he and a small army of suspected gang members set out to avenge the Saturday shooting. Police say Lloyd may have been running his criminal empire out of a room in the Deerfield Marriott Hotel for the past few months. Chicago Mayor Richard Daley says the city will continue to be at risk of gang violence as long as people like Willie Lloyd walk the streets.
Well, I think you have to take a guy like that and put him in jail for the rest of his life.
Gang members lined the streets outside the Area 4 headquarters to catch a glimpse of their beleaguered leader.
I'd like to present this trophy to Willie Lloyd, the King of Kings, the 2001 Macallan player ball. Give it up. Come on down, Willie Lloyd. Willie Lloyd. Come on down, Church. Give me $3 for flashing the most interest to you, Jack. Present you, I love you, my brother. Yes, sir. I've been your friend, been knowing you all your life.
Willie Lloyd, right up.
Check.
King of Kings.
Right on, King of Kings.
I want to thank Bishop Warren, Prince Simo, and all the players up here.
Yeah.
And gangsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about it, Chief.
And me. This is my first time being able to make one of these balls, but I'm glad to be here. I'm not going to hold it up. Church, and love.
Pop it, Jack. Yeah.
What you do for Willie?
Man, I would die for him, kill for him, rob for him, steal for him, go to jail for him too.
Police and prosecutors say that during Lloyd's quarter-century as gang leader, Vice Lord drug deals, extortion, and other crimes led to thousands of homicides.
Gang life is not anything to be glorified.
Willie Earl Lloyd, who spent over half his life in state and federal penitentiaries, is now imprisoned by his own body. Lloyd is the 55-year-old, he says retired, Supreme Chief of the almighty Vice Lord Nation.
That's right, the king of kings.
Lloyd has been paralyzed from the neck down since August 2003 when he was hit by 4 bullets fired by assassins in Garfield Park. Before the shooting, Lloyd says he quit the Vice Lords and became an outspoken critic of gang life. He believes his attackers included some of his former henchmen.
Willie Lloyd was a significant figure within the Vice Lord Nation, a prominent street gang based in Chicago. He joined the Vice Lords, a faction of the gang, at a young age and quickly ascended to a leadership position, where he proclaimed himself King of Kings and asserted his dominance over the entire Vice Lord Nation. His leadership was marred by criminal activities, including a prison term for his involvement in the murder of a police officer in Iowa. During his time in prison, Lloyd authored the Amalgamated Order of Lordism, a manifesto outlining the gang's command structure both inside and outside of prison. After numerous stints in prison, Lloyd eventually distanced himself from gang life following his release in 2002. He became an advocate against violence and worked on mediating gang conflicts and mentoring youth to steer them away from gang involvement. Lloyd collaborated with various organizations, including Chicago's School of Public Health and the Ceasefire Program, and even attempted to educate DePaul University students about the dangers of gang life, although this initiative was shut down due to parental concerns. Despite his efforts to reform, Lloyd's past continued to haunt him, culminating in a near-fatal shooting in 2003 that left him paralyzed. Lloyd's transformation from a gang leader to an anti-violence advocate highlights the complexities of gang life and the potential for change within individuals deeply involved in such environments. His story provides a nuanced perspective on the impact of gang culture on individuals and communities, as well as the challenges of escaping a life of crime. Jeff Fort, also known as Abdulmalik K-Bar, co-founded the Flukey Stokes gang in Chicago and later led its Rukins faction. Under Fort's leadership, the Flukey Stokes gained significant control over Southside Chicago, engaging in criminal activities such as robberies, extortion, and drug trafficking. In 1967, he formed the Grassroots Independent Voters of Illinois and secured a $1 million federal grant to fund a program aimed at teaching job skills to gang members. Despite his criminal activities, Fort was even invited by President Richard Nixon to attend the 1969 inaugural ball, an invitation he declined. After serving a prison sentence for misusing federal funds, Fort converted to Islam and rebranded the Flukey Stokes as El Rukin, aligning the gang with the Moorish Science Temple. Despite his religious conversion, Fort's criminal activities continued, and he was eventually convicted of drug trafficking. His involvement with foreign entities led to a conviction for conspiring with Libya to perform acts of domestic terrorism, resulting in an 80-year prison sentence. Fort's legacy is complex, with some remembering him for his leadership and potential for positive influence, while others focus on the violence and criminality associated with his leadership of the Flukey Stokes and El Rukins.
It's had a 25-year-long stronghold on Chicagoland. Now local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies believe they've crippled the Gangster Disciples' sophisticated drug-running operation.
We are the toughest gang in town, and we intend to work together in the future to make sure that no one steps into this void.
In the past 20 years, Larry Hoover, the Disciples' chairman, has been running the operation from behind state prison walls.
We went after the head of the snake, and we believe that we've ripped off the head of the snake with this series of indictments here today. The idea is by doing that, it will greatly cripple a gang.
U.S. State's Attorney Jim Burns compares the Disciples operation to a major corporation. Its CEO, president, and board members all charged on various drug and weapons offenses. The impact, he says, is expected to be immediate, not only for the city, but the suburbs.
It's a much wider spread problem than I think some people sitting very snugly and very comfortable in their suburban homes and think that it is not their problem. Frankly, they are wrong. It is our problem. We're all in this together.
And the Disciples' presence reared its head into the Chicago Police Department. Officer Sonia Irwin is indicted on a co-conspiracy charge.
It's clear to us that she was involved, and it's also clear to us that at this point in time, she is in the process of giving herself up.
Well, anytime you do a extensive amount of time, it can have two effects. It can harden you, or it can make you think. And I thought.
Larry Hoover, also known as King Larry, was the founder of the Gangster Disciples, a prominent Chicago street gang. After being sentenced to life imprisonment in 1973 for murder, Hoover maintained control over the gang from behind bars. In 1995, he faced further convictions for running a criminal enterprise from prison. Despite these convictions, Hoover has made claims of renouncing his gang affiliation and promoting growth and development as a new ethos for the Gangster Disciples. The narratives of Chicago's gang leaders are a mosaic of ambition, power, and transformation. Figures like Larry Hoover, Jeff Fort, and Willie Lloyd encapsulate the complex interplay between criminality and attempts at community engagement, highlighting the multifaceted nature of gang leadership. Their stories reveal a common thread: the struggle for power and identity in a city marked by socio-economic disparities. Despite their divergent paths, some towards further criminality, others towards community activism, each leader's legacy is a testament to the enduring impact of gang culture in Chicago. These histories not only shed light on the personal trajectories of the individuals involved, but also offer insights into the broader challenges and dynamics of
Shanti Craig, also known as Shake, from Birmingham. Craig, 42, was sentenced to 40 years in prison after pleading guilty in August 2019 to charges of racketeering conspiracy, which included murder and drug trafficking. As a board member, Craig held the highest ranking position in the Gangster Disciples, second only to the chairman of the board. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Craig orchestrated violence, drug trafficking, and murders, including the killing of a government informant in Colorado to protect his drug operations. They terrorized communities across the country by engaging in and ordering multiple acts of violence, including murder, stated Nicholas L. McQuaid, acting Assistant Attorney General of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. The significant sentences imposed on Craig for his national leadership role in the gang, and on Glass for creating an army of teenage killers, demonstrate that even the most sophisticated and ruthless gangs are no match for the coordinated efforts of federal, state, and local law enforcement. The Gangster Disciples are a national gang with origins in Chicago dating back to the 1970s. The gang is highly structured, featuring a hierarchy of leadership positions known as positions of authority. They strictly enforce rules among their members, with the most important being silence and secrecy, which prohibits cooperation with law enforcement. Violating this rule is punishable by death. Evidence presented at trial showed that the Gangster Disciples were responsible for at least 24 shootings between 2011 and 2015, including 12 murders. Craig were the driving force behind the devastation the gang caused, said Chris Hacker, special agent in charge of the FBI's Atlanta field office. Our goal is to dismantle these organized, violent criminal enterprises, and we could not do it without the efforts of the FBI-led Safe Streets Gang Task Force and its state and
Black
local...
Gangster Disciple leader Gregory Marshall pleads guilty to voluntary manslaughter and the beating demise of an Albany man being initiated into the gang. He's sentenced to 15 years in prison. Reginald Richardson was beaten and kicked to his demise while being beat into the Black Gangster Disciples in June 2009. Police says bringing down these gang leaders helps in the fight against gang activity. That's it, not all fun and gangs. There is serious time and punishment involved in this, said Albany Police Sergeant Pritesh Patel. About a dozen people have been implicated in Richardson's demise in an investigation that has run 2 years. 5 men are scheduled to stand trial for Richardson's demise July 18th. 6 other suspected gang members have already entered plea deals and are supposed to testify against the other defendants.
Directed members to harm the brothers, resulting in a violent assault on May 7, 2015. Vice Lords member Antonio Clark fired an AK-47 at the victims' house, hitting the brothers, their mother, and their 15-year-old sister. Fortunately, all survived the shooting. Everett pleaded guilty to 2 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon in aid of racketeering and 1 count of use and carry of a firearm during a crime of violence, leading to the dismissal of over a dozen other charges, including racketeering and witness tampering. His 162-month sentence highlights the severity of gang-related violence and the consequences for leadership roles in such activities. The Vice Lords, a national gang with roots in Chicago, has various branches, including the Detroit-based Traveling Vice Lords. Founded in 1962, the gang's membership ranges between 30,000 and 45,000. The conviction and sentencing of Everett and 8 other gang members, with sentences ranging from 36 to 240 months, underscore law enforcement's commitment to dismantling violent gangs and deterring gang lifestyles.
Investigating the death of a well-known gang leader. Jessica Gertler has the details.
Police swarmed a white Cadillac that plowed through a fence near the airport Thursday afternoon. Sitting inside, officers say they found a woman, Candid Sanders, and a man, Ronald Terry, both shot to death.
There's a homicide investigation still pending with regard to his death, so I can't comment on that.
Shelby County Assistant District Attorney Paul Hagerman knew Terry. He was one of the prosecutors when Terry, or who many knew as Big Pookie, went to trial in 2006 for trying to kill a fellow gang member he thought betrayed him.
During the trial, there was testimony that he was a leader of the Vice Lords here in Memphis, that he had come from Memphis from Chicago and from Illinois to help organize and lead the Vice Lords here in Memphis.
Other witnesses confirmed Terry's high-ranking role.
He had about a 17-year sentence. He probably served about 11 years of that sentence until he was released fairly recently.
Police are now trying to figure out what led to his murder. What's clear, hours after, the Tennessee Department of Corrections locked down every prison in the state due to information received from external law enforcement.
The murder of a high-ranking gang leader has law enforcement across the area on high alert this morning. For the past week, there have been rumblings about prisons on lockdown and obscure warnings coming from the TBI.
Local 24 News reporter Janae Fratzade is working this story for us in East Memphis. Janae, you're learning more about the details that are emerging regarding what's really going on here.
John, a major gang leader, was among 2 people killed in a double homicide last week. Take a look. Ronald Terry and Candid Sanders were killed inside a car on Dwight Road near Airways, just blocks from the Memphis airport. The day after the murder, the Tennessee Department of Corrections locked down every prison in the state. Now, we're told there was concern fights could break out in Tennessee prisons due to Terry's murder. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued a vague warning for law enforcement to be vigilant after word spread that a hit may have been put out on law enforcement.
In 2006, Ronald Terry, an alleged Memphis gang leader, faced serious charges for the attempted murder of another vice lord. During his trial, Terry surprised everyone when he changed his plea midway through closing arguments, accepting a 15-year prison sentence. But before that dramatic twist, he took the stand and offered an inside look at the vice lord inner workings. Terry, known as Big Pokey or Porky, recounted the day he was blessed in to the vice lords back on August 10, 1998. He described how he quickly rose through the ranks to become a 5-star universal elite, overseeing South Memphis as his territory. According to Terry, the vice lords operate like a structured government, complete with officers and committees. He explained that the gang's leadership is not centralized under one person, but rather formed by a committee representing each branch, creating what they call the nation. Terry specifically identified with the UVL, or Unknown Vice Lords, one of the many branches within this complex organization. Terry revealed that much of the Vice Lord's symbolism is drawn from the back of a dollar bill. The 21 bricks of the pyramid, he said, represent the 21 branches of the organization. While the eye is seen as the eye of Allah watching over his people, the Vice Lords, according to Terry, have strong ties to Islamic faith, with members even memorizing verses from the Quran as part of their initiation. He also spoke about the gang's strict bylaws, its literature, and the principles members are expected to follow, with meetings held every Friday. Terry claimed that he left gang life behind in 2004, acknowledging that exposing these secrets put his life and his family's lives at risk. However, during the trial, a Memphis police officer testified that the gangs in Memphis weren't as organized as Terry had portrayed. Fast forward to 2019. Ronald Terry, now 49, was found shot to death alongside a woman named Candid Sanders in a parked car in southeast Memphis. The news of his death sent shockwaves through the city, leading the Tennessee Department of Corrections to lock down every prison in the state. The murder of a man once seen as the leader of the Memphis Vice Lords raised fears of a potential retaliation and further violence in both the streets and the penitentiaries. Crackdown on gang-related crime. A convicted gang leader from Knoxville has been sentenced to life in prison, plus an additional 10 years on serious charges including drug trafficking, firearms violations, and money laundering. This sentencing comes after Alam J. Turner, just 23 years old, was found guilty alongside 6 other members of a notorious gang in East Tennessee. Turner wasn't just any gang member. Witnesses at the trial identified him as the Knoxville leader of the violent street gang known as the Unknown Ghost Vice Lords. This gang was heavily involved in the distribution of a dangerous cocktail of drugs. But it didn't stop there. They also faced charges for possessing firearms in furtherance of their drug trafficking activities, as well as illegally distributing drugs and unlawfully possessing firearms across East Tennessee. The sentencing, handed down by Honorable Thomas A. Varlin of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Tennessee, was influenced by Turner's significant role as a leader and organizer of crime in the Knoxville area. United States Attorney Francis M. Hamilton III didn't mince words, saying, "Gang violence, coupled with armed trafficking of lethal drugs, has resulted in devastation and death within our community." This sentence sends a powerful message that armed gang leaders who recruit and use minors to flood the community with drugs and who employ credible threats of violence in their crimes will face justice. In a series of events that spanned over 3 years, Dustin Keith Overbay, a convicted felon and high-ranking member of the Vice Lords gang, found himself repeatedly in trouble with the law in East Tennessee. Let's break down this story of crime, firearms, and a descent into delusion. It all started in December 2017, when a Hawkins County grand jury indicted Overbay, a resident of Mount Carmel, on 3 counts of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Overbay had previously been convicted of a felony in Sullivan County for drug charges, yet he was caught with multiple firearms and drug paraphernalia in his possession. This marked the beginning of a legal battle that would only intensify in the years to come. Fast forward to June 2019, and Overbay was back in the spotlight. This time, he was arrested by a joint SWAT team from Sullivan County and Kingsport Police at a home in Kingsport. Overbay was wanted on multiple outstanding felony warrants from both Hawkins and Sullivan counties. Authorities had received tips about Overbay's whereabouts and confirmed his location with the help of the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office Vice and Narcotics Department. When they moved in, they found Overbay in the living room, armed with a .38 caliber pistol, a serious violation for a convicted felon. But Overbay wasn't the only one facing charges that day. Matthew Carpenter, the homeowner, was found downstairs with a sawed-off shotgun and a stolen semi-automatic pistol, along with 3 grams of drugs. Another individual, Brian Belcher, was also arrested at the scene on a fugitive warrant from Virginia. Overbay was charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, while Carpenter faced multiple charges, including drug possession, possession of a stolen firearm, and introducing contraband into a penal facility. But the story takes an even darker turn in 2020. In January, police were called to Overbay's residence on Bay Street in Mount Carmel after he reportedly fired a stolen pistol inside his home. Overbay, described by police as having delusional tendencies, claimed he saw people who weren't there, including a baby in his closet, and fired 2 shots at these imaginary figures. When officers arrived, they found Overbay in a state of confusion, denying any knowledge of the gunfire. However, they discovered a spent 9mm shell casing near his bed, and a subsequent search revealed a stolen 9mm semi-automatic handgun hidden in his great-aunt's room. The gun had been reported stolen from Kingsport. Overbay was arrested once again, charged with unlawful possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and possession of stolen property. He was released on a $10,000 bond, with a preliminary hearing set for February. This case is a chilling example of how a life of crime can spiral into paranoia and danger, putting not just the criminal, but those around them at risk. Overbay's story isn't just about the crimes he committed. It's also a stark reminder of the consequences of a life entangled in gang activity and illegal firearms. In a significant development, officials with the Tennessee Department of Corrections Office of Investigations and Conduct have announced the federal indictment of a notorious gang leader, Terry "Cockeye" Smith. This indictment comes as part of a sweeping multi-state drug trafficking investigation aimed at cracking down on criminal networks operating both inside and outside of prisons. Smith, a high-ranking member of the infamous Vice Lord street gang, has been serving a 14-year sentence at the West Tennessee State Penitentiary for his role in the facilitation of attempted second-degree murder and aggravated assault. But now, his criminal activities have caught up with him on a much larger scale, leading to his transfer from state to federal custody. Commissioner Tony Parker highlighted the importance of this indictment, stating, "This is a huge step toward keeping drugs and other contraband out of our facilities." As Smith faces his new charges, this case serves as a stark reminder that criminal enterprises, even those operated from behind bars, are not beyond the reach of justice. These cases serve as stark reminders of the dangerous power wielded by gang leaders, even from behind prison walls. While law enforcement continues to fight against the tide of organized crime, the stories of Terry, Elsia, Turner, Smith, and Overbay highlight the ongoing battle to secure our communities from the grip of gangs. As these individuals face the consequences of their crimes, we're left to reflect on the broader impact of their actions on the lives of those around them and the relentless efforts required to bring them to justice. Stay tuned for more in-depth stories on crime,